And joins me now. Anne, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
A very big week coming up. We've just been talking to Robert Jenrick, one of your colleagues from Reform, about the state of play. It's ludicrous, it seems to me, that we have a situation where a Prime Minister is about to speak in Parliament this afternoon, justifying why he didn't know something that he should have known, and why he's so angry that nobody told him what he should have known, and that he was so incurious about the appointment of the most senior diplomat in the diplomatic service to a very sensitive role in a new US presidential performance, that he just kind of was run rings round by the Foreign Office. I just don't believe it, do you?
Well, it's very hard to believe. It may be true, but it's hard to believe because, first of all, you've got to ask what possible motivation the Foreign Office, which tries to run a good diplomatic corps, would have for taking that sort of risk and deliberately keeping the Prime Minister in the dark. Seems to me unlikely. What would have normally happened, certainly what would have happened in my time, if somebody of that degree of standing had failed a security clearance, the head of the Foreign Office would have told the Cabinet Secretary would have told the Prime Minister, and he would have told the Prime Minister in half a second flat before the situation was allowed to develop. So I find it difficult to believe, but if it is really so that for some obscure reason the Foreign Office decided not to inform number 10 of something of that order of magnitude, then you really do have to ask, what sort of a government is this? How is it being run like that?
But this is what I mean by it not being really a credible story, because Robert Jenrick was just saying, as I think you would probably know from your time in government as well, not everything in government is written down, not everything is minuted, not everything is for public consumption, whether it be 20 years later or 30 years later. Quite often, things are said, as Robert said to the Prime Minister, verbally. I find it absolutely and utterly incredible that he would not have asked the question, did he pass the vetting? And when he told Parliament, as he did back in January of this year, that, all the vetting procedures were in order, that suggests to me that he thought that they were. Now, if he did think that they were, and yet they were not, then he's either lying or he doesn't know.
Well, exactly. There are only one of two possible options there. Either he really genuinely didn't know, in which case, as I say, you've got to ask how, what, why, because it is just not normal processes of government. I tend to think that probably what happened was he said, "Oh, I assume all's well," and somebody said, "Oh, yes, Prime Minister," and it wasn't taken much beyond that. But of course, it should have been, because this wasn't an appointment to some small state that nobody's heard of somewhere. This was the USA. This was our major ally. This was Trump. This was a hugely sensitive appointment that, in my view, and I said it at the time, should have gone to a career diplomat.
Yes.
And I just find it very, very unlikely that would somehow be brushed under the carpet.
Well, this is the thing. And the fact remains, though, that James Cleverly, a former colleague of yours at one point, says he finds it ridiculous and unlikely that the Prime Minister would not have known. And it does seem, and there is nothing in the rule book that says, all right, you don't have to give the reason why somebody fails the vetting, because that could be a breach of privacy or whatever, but you can say that they didn't make the vetting process, that they failed it. You don't have to give the reason why they failed it, but you surely have to tell the Prime Minister that they failed it, because this guy was given what they're calling strap 3 clearance, which means he had access to the most highly sensitive and national security related documents in the government.
Well, let me just ask you a very fundamental question. What is the point of having a security vetting if you then ignore the result? What is the point of it?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question, because if you're going to give jobs to people who fail the vetting process, then, it's not really a vetting process, is it? It's a fishing expedition to see what you can find out about someone before you give them the job anyway.
Well, I can't think of anybody else at any level who, if they failed their security vetting, and regular employees of the services are put through vetting several times.
Right.
I just don't understand how somebody who failed a vetting can somehow have that result ignored. Now, presumably, the answer to that is, Mike, because he was Peter Mandelson.
Yes.
Presumably, that is the answer.
Well, there are several answers, I think, all of which point to the same place, which is, as you say, because he was Peter Mandelson. But Starmer supposedly, according to Ollie Robbins, made it very clear that he wanted him to get the job. So that's one piece of information. Morgan McSweeney apparently was absolutely key to advising Keir Starmer that he should give Mandelson the job. He, of course, used to work for Mandelson back in the days when he was business secretary, when he was busy allegedly sending secrets to Jeffrey Epstein via a government email system, which apparently nobody knew about. And I wonder whether Tony Blair's hand is in there somewhere as well, because Tony Blair seems to me to still hold some kind of sway over this Labour government. There's still quite a few people who, for one reason or another, worked for Tony Blair and are now back in government. Jackie Smith, Alan Milburn, Morgan McSweeney, Peter Mandelson. Suddenly all these Blairites were back at the heart of government, despite, in many cases, having been pretty much turfed out for being useless.
Yes, I mean, I don't know whether Blair, would have spoken up for Mandelson or not. We do know that he was a great admirer of Mandelson. We know that he overlooked a resignation, and it resulted in yet another resignation as a result of that. And we know that he was a great admirer, but whether he had any hand in this, I simply don't know. And I think one should beware of speculation, because what we have and what we know is quite bad enough.
Yes, but is it not pathetic that we have reached this kind of what I call low nadir of British politics? I mean, even people in politics are complaining that we're going to spend the next 5 days immersed in this kind of, docudrama and psychodrama of who knew what when, who told what when, who said this when and where. And, it's pathetic in a way, because nobody really in the world of reality will believe a word that Keir Starmer comes out with this afternoon, because he will be in his usual kind of clipped, lawyerly tones where he'll say that he's furious that he wasn't told. But that gives the impression of a man who's not in charge of his brief. It gives the impression of a man who doesn't have any authority. There are so many moving parts that it's a bit like having a lawyer talk to you about your divorce, when, reality is over here and legal reality is over there. The two things never join up, because I can find a lawyer that can excuse almost everything that I do based upon the way that you structure a sentence.
It's a bit like you can do anything with statistics. You can do most things at any rate with a legal argument. I do think that the point that you make, that the nation is fed up with this sort of thing, just dominating Parliament, when we're so badly defended that we can't even put ships to sea. When people are seriously worried about the cost of living because of the crisis in the Middle East, when all that is going on, people do want. I mean, can you imagine Winston Churchill? I mean, getting sort of immersed in this sort of stuff.
No.
Margaret Thatcher spending.
Or Margaret Thatcher, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you had these people running Britain during the Second World War, they'd have been having inquiries after inquiry after inquiry. We've heard the weather might not be too good, so we can't go today. We'll have another inquiry as to why the weather isn't as good as it should be. They don't seem to be able to make a decision. I think it was summed up very well by Keir Starmer on Friday, going to Paris for a summit that he didn't need to go to decide to make a resolution with a bunch of other world leaders who are inconsequential when it comes to the Middle East about whether to open the Straits of Hormuz. By the time he made an announcement saying they wanted to reopen the Straits of Hormuz, they'd already been reopened by the Iranians,
And closed again.
Yes.
And the fact is, that whatever that summit decided and whatever conclusion they came to wasn't going to make any difference in the practical world. The difference is going to be made by Iran or by the USA. It's not going to be made by a group of people talking together. So I think this is an incompetent government. Now, Blair's government was competent but deceitful. This government is incompetent, and I suspect we're going to find out this afternoon, also deceitful.
Yes. And for which the punishment should be what, though? Because unfortunately, the people of this country are fed up with deceitful government. They've had it for a while.
Well, they can get rid of it at the next general election, but sadly, that's still, some years away. And I've no doubt they will get rid of it at the next general election. But the answer is the old order is dead. We need something completely new. We need a reform government.
Well, I wonder whether any of this will lead us to a place where we need the election before 2029. Because, I mean, looking at the state of the economy, which we're going to talk about in the next hour, we've got, we're about to go through the 2 million barrier. It's going to be 5.3% unemployment, higher than it's been for a decade. We've got a defence procurement scenario which is woeful. We've got no ships, as you said. We've got nothing to defend ourselves from open borders policies on the south coast of this country. We've got more thousands of people arriving every bleeding day. We're in a crisis, aren't we?
Yes, we are in a crisis, but as I've said endlessly, and I've said it on this programme before, the only way you can get rid of a government is for it to lose a vote of confidence in the House of Commons. And Starmer's majority, turkeys don't vote for Christmas, Starmer's majority is too vast for them to lose a vote of confidence. We have to face the fact we're stuck with this government. We might even be stuck with a much worse Prime Minister if he has to go. And we're stuck with it until 2029 at the latest, 2028 probably at the earliest.
Yeah, it is appalling, isn't it? I mean, even Dale Vince is out this morning in the papers saying that, give up on this net zero mania, stop spending money on heat pumps, because people should be able to just keep the boilers that they've got, because even he doesn't think heat pumps are a good idea. And he says, let's keep the boilers and buy the bombs. This from an eco-activist.
Yeah, no, and I agree. It's a question of priorities. Do you want this country defended? Do you want it able, to stand up to any hostile action from a foreign state? I mean, do you actually want that? Do you want us to be able to retake the Falklands if the Argentinians decided to take advantage of the current situation?
Yeah.
Do you want us to be able to defend ourselves? And the answer to that has got to be yes, because if we are not adequately defended, then frankly, no matter what our eco policies, our social security policies, our national health policies, they are all at risk if we can't defend our nation.
Exactly. And what is the point of having a nation if it is not defensible, and if you cannot actually stop anyone from coming in? I mean, we've got a story this morning saying the Belgians are now joining in the Telegraph with the migrant invasion, effectively. Apparently, Belgian coast guards are helping illegal migrants reach the UK by handing them over to the French. They previously were stopping people from leaving the shores of Belgium, but apparently now they're not. They're now escorting them into French territorial waters from Flanders, so that they can then get on boats and come to Britain.
Well, at least they're sending them back to France, and they're not escorting them towards Britain and expecting our border force to pick them up. So at least they're doing that much. But no, in the past, the Belgians had a very strict attitude because they did not want their shores to be turned into a sort of second EU Sangatte or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And they still don't, which is why they're taking them off to France rather than letting them go direct from Belgium.
Yeah.
But Britain has been so feeble and so useless. Do you blame other countries for saying, what's it got to do with us, Gov?
Yeah. No, listen, I don't blame them because they don't want to keep them there. I mean, I always said Emmanuel Macron doesn't want to, do any deals with Britain. He just takes the 500 million quid we give him and does nothing at all. Watches and waves them away, because, of course, the French don't want them either. Nobody wants them.
Well, exactly. And, the French are very happy to see them heading for our shores. But the migrants themselves, once you get a reform government, will be faced with a very different situation if they arrive here. They will be automatically refused asylum. They will be automatically detained until they are deported. They won't be in hotels. They won't be in ordinary accommodation. They will get a very, very different sort of reception. And until you've got that deterrent in place, you have got absolutely no reason for the migrants to decide not to come.
Exactly right. One final one for you, which is more of a cultural question really than anything else. It's about education. Apparently this is a suggestion from an organisation that wants to see more inclusive clothing being worn in schools, in our schools. Apparently, pupils should be allowed to wear tracksuits in the classroom to make school uniform more inclusive. Seems to me that that's going to make things actually less inclusive, because what you'll get is people wearing expensive trainers, expensive, sportswear, if they can afford to spend their money on it. And then so the poorer kids will look like they're the poorer kids.
Exactly. Whereas when you have a set uniform, everybody is wearing the same thing.
Yeah.
And that is what should be stuck to. But it should also be stuck to as a matter of basic discipline. I mean, when you are in the workplace, you will have to follow a particular code, and that will be expected. And so I think that it's just normal preparation for life.
Yeah, you would think. Absolutely right. Now, we've got a poll going today. You might like this one. This is the worst word that's been invented for the 21st century. Is it diversity? Is it inclusivity? Is it woke? Or is it, at the moment, the leader, Starmer?
I'm tempted by Starmer, and certainly your tone of voice tried to take me that way, but I'm actually going to go for.
How dare you suggest that my voice and its tincture may have an effect on what you might say. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. Great to see you, Anne. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you again. Check out Anne's Substack, where you will see all manner of wonderful ththings, and occasionally even things that we share from this show as well. So go and force yourself into that situation. We're going to speak to Neil McAvoy.